All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're looking at something I think a lot of us can relate to in one way or another,
Mhm.
and that's the world of high school teachers. Specifically, what they're going through these days, what challenges they're facing, and
Ah,
and maybe even pick into some possible solutions. We've got this really fascinating conversation between two teachers to help us with this.
okay.
Um, Miss Jones, who teaches English, and Mr. Smith, a math teacher.
Mhm.
And they're just kind of chatting in the teacher's lounge. But
Right.
what they're saying is really eye-opening. I think it highlights some universal struggles.
Mhm.
I mean, even if you're not a teacher,
Yeah.
that feeling of being overwhelmed with work,
Mhm.
the struggle to integrate technology effectively, and just, finding that work-life
Oh, for
balance.
sure. Right.
We all deal with those things in some way, right?
Absolutely. And I think by taking a deep dive into what teachers are going through,
Yeah.
we can get a better understanding of those pressures, for ourselves as well.
Right.
It's that feeling of needing to do more with less time,
Yeah.
constantly sorting through a ton of information
Hmm.
and trying to keep up with all the new tools and demands.
Exactly. It's everywhere.
It really is.
So let's listen to what Miss Jones and Mr. Smith are talking about.
Okay.
Um, they start talking about grading.
Mhm.
And Mrs. Jones at one point says she feels like she's drowning in a sea of essays.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that image is so powerful.
Yeah, that's really striking imagery, and I think it speaks volumes about just how much teachers are dealing with these days.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of research showing that teacher workload has
Mhm.
has really increased dramatically over the past few years, and a huge part of that is all the grading.
Right.
There was one study I was looking at
Okay.
that found teachers who spend more than 20 hours a week on grading are 30% more likely to experience burnout,
Oh, wow.
which is really concerning because, it's not just checking for right answers.
Right.
It's about providing feedback that actually helps students learn and grow. And that takes time.
It does. And then they get into this idea of personalized learning,
Oh, yeah.
which is really fascinating to me
Yeah.
because both teachers, they want to give individual feedback,
Right.
but with, large class sizes, sometimes it feels impossible.
For sure.
I remember when I was tutoring, I struggled with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea of personalized learning makes so much sense,
Yeah.
but putting it into practice, well, that's a whole other story.
That actually gets to the heart of what's called differentiated instruction,
Sure.
which is this idea that teaching should be tailored to each student's needs. Sounds great in theory, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, think about it. You've got a classroom with 30 students,
Hmm.
each with their own learning styles and paces, trying to create individual lesson plans for each one of them.
Right.
It's just a logistical nightmare.
No wonder teachers are feeling so stressed.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how this stress, it spills over
Mm-hmm.
into their lives outside of school too.
Right.
Spending evenings and weekends grading papers. I mean, that can't be good for anyone.
No, definitely not. And this ties into that larger conversation
Yeah.
about work-life balance that I think so many of us are grappling with.
Mhm.
Teachers in particular are often shown to have very high stress levels. And part of that is definitely due to this blurring of the lines
Right.
between work and personal time.
So we've talked about the workload and how it impacts their personal lives.
Mhm.
But what about technology? Could that be part of the solution?
Mm.
Mrs. Jones and Mr. Smith seem to have mixed feelings about it. They
Yeah.
said it's helpful in some ways, but it's definitely not a cure-all.
Yeah.
It's like, that news software that's supposed to make your life easier,
Uh-huh.
but then it ends up being more of a hassle.
Oh, totally. You're right. Technology can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there are some amazing tools out there,
Mhm.
like grading software, which can help with some of the more tedious tasks. And then there are also things like adaptive learning platforms, which are online tools that can adjust the difficulty and content based on each student's progress.
Oh, wow. So it's kind of like having a personalized tutor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is, but like you said, technology is not a magic solution. It often requires training and support
Mm-hmm.
and a healthy dose of skepticism too.
Right. Because on every shiny new tool is actually effective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of them can even create more work for teachers.
Speaking of new tools, their conversation takes a really interesting turn
Oh, yeah.
when they start talking about AI, artificial intelligence,
Okay.
and they're talking about using it for things like grading.
Mm.
and creating those personalized learning paths. So I'm curious to get your take on this. What are your thoughts on AI in education?
Well, AI in education is definitely a hot topic right now,
Mm.
and for good reason. It's exciting to think about the possibility.
Like imagine if AI could automate some of those time-consuming tasks. That would free up teachers to focus more on one-on-one instruction.
That would be amazing.
It would, but at the same time, we have to be aware of the potential downsides.
Right, of course.
We need to make sure that AI is being used ethically and responsibly.
It sounds like Mrs. Jones and Mr. Smith are cautiously optimistic
Okay.
about AI. They decide to do more research and figure out what AI tools
Hmm.
might actually work for them and their students. They even call it a priority.
I love that.
It's like they're saying, we're not afraid to explore new things
Yeah.
if it means helping our students and, making our own lives a bit easier.
It really shows a commitment to their profession and a willingness to adapt. And I think that's so important for teachers, to advocate for themselves and explore new solutions.
Right.
There are actually a lot of organizations and resources out there now
Oh, cool.
that are specifically focused on teacher well-being and providing access to new and innovative tools.
So what can we take away from all of this, even if we're not in education? Because let's be honest, this isn't just about teachers.
Right.
This is about all of us.
Exactly. Information overload, trying to find that work-life balance, figuring out how to use technology effectively. These are things we all deal with in our own ways.
Yeah. Here's something to think about.
Okay.
What if AI could perfectly grade every assignment and create individual learning paths for every single student? What should teachers focus on then?